I think if you look around, if you dive into the literature, I think you will find plenty of Islamic science fiction. And I basically do a kind of literature review in my essay for Hashia, where I look at science fiction from the past century, essentially, and I try to find all the examples of science fiction that engage with Islam in its imagination of the future. And a lot of science fiction that does that, moving beyond Dune, right? A lot of it is often very, yes, it is very Orientalist, very reductive, but sometimes also interesting. But what's striking to me is how often um, the assumption is that the Islam of the future will either be, and the Muslims of the future will either be in the quote unquote, to borrow a term from Salman Sayyid, Muslims will either be in the future, in the past of the future, so that even 10,000 years from now or 20,000 years from now, Muslims will still become primitive people living on desert planets, right? So they're always sort of like on the margins of the future. So you find so many science fiction stories written in the West, they just reproduce the current imperial status quo, where it's the West, quote unquote, that's in power, and the rest are on the margins. And so Muslims remain on the margins even 10,000, 20,000 years from now. Right? So either Muslims are irrelevant or they're too relevant in that they've taken over the world. And now the world is ruled by like a nightmarish caliphate. So it's a dystopia. Right?
Mm.
So you have this binary. Either you'll see that in the futurological imagination of these stories, either Muslims uh are backwaters or they are essentially dictators, right? They're tyrants because they control the galaxy, and they're imposing, very scary Sharia law on everyone. You have these very reductive characterizations, and it's very important for a community to be able to write itself into the future. And by and large, Muslims don't do that. We don't write ourselves into the future, right? We leave that task to others, and uh, we ourselves struggle to really look anywhere but, frankly, the past, where we try to find refuge in a sort of idealized past. And when you're unable to write yourself into the future, you essentially depoliticize yourself and thereby dehumanize yourself. So we look ahead and we see nothing. There's nothing waiting for us, and I think this breeds a terrible kind of pessimism, and frankly, a victim complex. That's what
Mm.
pessimism, it breeds a victim complex where we always perceive history now as something that happens to Muslims and to Islam, rather than us being something that shapes uh, history. So again, when you're unable to write yourself into the future, you breed a very passive pessimism uh, that it ends with either total helplessness, like a total lack of agency, or with a sort of Machiavellian entitlement that, well, since we're so persecuted, we are entitled to the ends justify the means. We are entitled to do whatever it is we have to do to restore our agency and our dignity. These are two very extreme end states, and neither should be acceptable to.